IVM.
This is Storytellers and Storysellers live on tape. You're listening to Vineet Kanabar on the IVM Podcast Network. Over the last few episodes, we've been talking to people from different aspects of the business of entertainment, whether you're on stage or on camera or behind it, or you sit at a desk doing business stuff. One kind of representation we haven't had was legal, and I've gone ahead and tried to fix that with this episode. Please say hello to Priyanka Khimani from Anand and Khimani, who joins us today on Storytellers and Storysellers to talk all things legal. Actually, we're going to make it a double episode so that we get all of Priyanka's legal expertise here. Hi Priyanka, great to have you on the show.
Hi, Vineet. It's lovely to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
It's absolutely, equal parts awesome and scary to have a lawyer in the room, but we will do
I'll
our
try and
best.
be
Right?
nice.
No, I'm just joking. I'm joking. So, Priyanka, like I mentioned when we were talking earlier, there is so much that a lawyer is needed to do in the entertainment business. Yet, we find that it is a scarcely understood discipline in so many ways in entertainment, right? So before we talk about you and your journey with law and your experiences and cases and matters, get us started by telling us what are lawyers expected to do today in the entertainment space. Or just give us like a day-to-day rundown of what your life is like.
So I can't, I think I'll speak for at least my personal experience, because a lot of it has been learning and growing on the job. I think the definition of what an entertainment attorney is required to do is changing so quickly and so rapidly. And again, I say this more from my own personal experience, right? Gone are the days where you thought that an entertainment lawyer would look at your contract with a network or with a platform and, or an endorsement and comment on that and negotiate that for you. I think today, it's pretty much, I think I see myself as being the general counsel of a corporate, where the corporate is your client, right? Now, whether that is actually a corporate or whether it's a talent, but you're really seeing yourself as the karta dharta of this particular entity. So everything that goes into good housekeeping, whether that is making sure that, simple things like trademarks, have they been filed? Are they being protected? Attributes of that person or that personality. Contracts, of course, whether it's endorsements or film, TV, their social media presence. Then what are they saying? You're working hand in hand with their publicists, with their agent, with their managers.
Right.
There are payment issues. There could be things that they may say or stand for in terms of what they believe in, what they want to talk about, or even
kinds of businesses they're investing in.
Exactly, kind of businesses that they're investing in, which is why I say that you're looking at, Talent Inc. Literally, to even various aspects of their personal lives, like, again, their investments, where do they see themselves being 5 years from now, including if they see themselves maybe in a different location, who are they with at this point of time, what happens next, estate planning, it's just anything and everything. And I think every single day, in my professional experience, I find myself pushing the envelope of what is the definition or meaning of being an entertainment lawyer.
That's so fantastic to hear. And it's even more interesting because when I was reading up on your work and the stuff that you've done, you could have been a performer, or you could have been a writer or producer or something that was more artsy than legal, if I may put it like that. Talk us through how you started or how you found yourself with law, right? I think there's an amazing lesson there, especially for people who consider themselves creative, that you can be good at many things and all it takes, I think, is hard work. But I'm not going to say it. I'm going to let you say it. Go for it.
Well, first of all, parents. I think I am still a little slightly different generation where I think we were on the cusp of, I was listening to one of your previous podcasts, and I think you and I can safely assume, are from that period where we were just on the cusp of internet breaking out and becoming what it is
Absolutely.
today, right? You had the early days of social media, and actually, I think we got introduced to internet even just a little before that, where you still had Messenger, and
Right.
then came Orkut and all of that, right?
Yeah.
So we're
Yeah.
still that era, and I think today, when I look at a lot of young kids, and you're seeing content, and you're seeing how much opportunity there is, and how much of a career it can realistically be for you, right? But back then, if you were one of those kids that did well in school and were academically, strong, it was a given that you would either do, science or typical science, arts, commerce. And then if
Yep.
you chose
Yeah.
arts, and then your parents are thinking that, what did we do wrong in bringing up this child? I was one of those kids where I think my mom was terribly offended at the idea of, it was all very well that I was this kid who was doing a lot of different things as far as extracurriculars were concerned. Did a lot of theater, Hindi, street plays, Marathi theater, and this was all being done professionally. You worked with the best of names in the business. Wrote for television for a long, long
Right.
time. I actually wrote my first show for Z when I was 15 years old. Got screen credit for it. Now looking back, you
Oh,
realize
wow.
the enormity of what it was when you were 15.
What's it called?
It was called Tamanna House. It was a 60 episodic thriller, had Jas Arora and Ruby Bhatia, just on the success of his song Gurunal Ishq Mitha.
Right.
So yeah,
Right.
it was,
And the Ruby Bhatia.
yeah.
Right. Fantastic. I will check this out. Priyanka's shaking her hands and being like, no, don't check it out. But do check it out.
नहीं, but
Go
still,
on, go
अगर
on.
कहीं ना कहीं है, तो I would also love to see those videos and those episodes. But anyway, so I did a whole bunch of that. But even then, when it came to it being a career choice, I could hear loud and clear that that was just not happening, right? But I think the
Right.
Kida in me kept it going. So while studying, I did HSC with science, then did biotechnology, but simultaneously kept writing, kept doing theater, kept trying a whole bunch of different things. A part of the reason was also because it was pocket money and I desperately needed
Right.
it for a variety of reasons and circumstances back home. And I must confess, looking back, I think even though I tried my hand at a whole bunch of things, what we'd qualify as in that sense, creative space, right? Somehow at that moment, none of it was succeeding. So it was a lot of constant failure. And again, going back to the time that I was doing it at, or the reasons that you were doing it as, I think we measure failure in a very different sense, right? Today, if I look back at that point of time, it was failure because it wasn't helping you make a certain amount of money that you needed to support your
Right.
family back home. Not because your work wasn't good or your work wasn't being appreciated or you weren't getting opportunity to do more. It wasn't that.
It wasn't what you needed then.
Exactly. And I think that
Sure.
at some level, sort of keeps pushing you to try something different. And this is something that I've realized, and I tell a lot of people that life is a beautiful way of bringing all experiences together, right? Nothing that you
Right.
do or encounter, or even people that you meet or experiences that you have, they're not all for nothing. And I think because of years of having tried my hand at different things, you sort of got a sense of what was happening in that space, right? You were on a set, you were in and out of a recording studio, you were in a vanity van, you were going to producers' offices, you were seeing what a broadcaster was saying when, there was a choice of a certain actor or a certain filmmaker, etc.
Right.
And I think
Right.
when I combine all of that together and look at my practice today as an entertainment lawyer, the biggest advantage that I have is really all those years of struggle, right? Because a lot
Right.
of attorneys um, perhaps don't have the benefit of that experience. And
That's insider insight, maybe.
exactly. And I think you've had the benefit or the privilege of putting yourself in that other person's shoes. So today, when you're looking
Right.
at a contract, you're faced with a particular situation, tricky situation that you're trying to resolve. You know what it is like to be in the shoes of that broadcaster or the producer or the talent or the brand involved. And therefore, I think you're being able to arrive at solutions that are not just legal, but are also commercial in nature, right? Because ultimately, what is it? We're here to do business, to take things forward, to try and find solutions. You're not,
Right.
yes, a part of my job is to say what can't be done, but I think equally a part of my job, and I think that's where the creative hat still is being done. A big part of my job is to also find a creative solution and tell you how can you do it in a manner that is in everyone's best interest. So to
Right.
that extent, I think I'm very, very grateful for all the years of in the quote unquote failing.
No, and I love the way you said failure at creative, which was not what you needed at that time, which still leaves the thought open, right? That consciously you knew the choice that you were making and what you chose to work hard at, right? It's not failure in the sense that my output is not good or I'm not happy with it. It's almost a practical creative life decision, right? The second thing that really stood out to me, and you mentioned it here as well, and I read about it on your story profile as well. It's a beautiful profile
Thank you.
that someone's put down on your story for you. Very insightful into a bunch of things. But you started as a young lawyer at a firm, stumbled into entertainment law with Lata Mangeshkar of all people. For people who want to know that story, I mean, I know I can just ask Priyanka to tell it again, and if she feels like it, she should. But please go and read the profile. It's a great story there. But here you are, hot young lawyer, getting clients, which is unheard of, nearly unheard of, your first or second associate year level, now setting up almost a new division, I'm guessing, at that point in time. And then something happens and you're like, no, I'm going to start something on my own, right? No, I'm sure there are several great stories here, but the few that I want to focus on is young lawyer, still getting to know the law, becoming a bit of an expert, like deep learning in one part of law, but still learning, still green. And now you're an entrepreneur as well, right? And that means setting up a company, setting up an office, giving it a name, 100 other considerations that weren't part of your life before. How was that period for you? And how did you negotiate that?
I think it's actually one of the most challenging, but also at the same time, most satisfying journeys ever. And I think till date, you're learning, right? As an entrepreneur. Being a lawyer and being an entrepreneur are two very, very different things. You may be a good lawyer, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you'd be a good leader, you'd be a good entrepreneur, you'd be a good business person. And you see that time and again, right? And that's why a lot of people sometimes consciously make the choice that, look, I know that these are my limitations. I enjoy just practicing law for myself, for the satisfaction it gives me. But I don't think I enjoy a whole different side of it, which is the business side of it. I think for me, going back to what you were saying with Lata Mangeshkar, it was a big, big tipping point, I must say. I think I was barely 6 months old into the practice. I was doing something very, very different. But because I had had this experience, this background in entertainment, when the call came, it was easy to sort of, think practically what that solution would be, of course, combined with your knowledge of what the law in that specific area or that specific subject required you to do. And I think she's a client till date and by far one of the coolest, wittiest women I know. But I think one of the reasons to start on my own is, it gave me a lot of confidence when I was advising and working with the kind of names that I already was in, within 2 years of
Right.
the practice. Everything after that has been, I mean, not that it wasn't hard work before, but after that, I think you just multiply, 100 times because it's your own baby, right? It's something that you're nurturing, something that you're doing. I often say this to people when they ask me that, do you know, how is it just 24/7? But the simple answer is this: if you're a musician or if you're an artist, right, who likes to paint, you're not seeing कि अच्छा today, अभी 7 बज गए, अब नहीं होगा यार.
अभी गाना नहीं बनाएंगे और
नहीं होता है ना वैसा. If that composition comes to your head, I mean, you don't care if it's in the middle of the night. You like just get up and sort of put it on. I think for me, I really do equate it to art, as corny or cheesy some people might find it.
And
And
I absolutely love it. Like, I absolutely
and
love it. Yeah.
routinely when artists call me and say ki, acha, we're sending you this, can I get it in 2 hours? And routinely I'll like very nicely say, I said, if your next masterpiece, are you going to be able to deliver that to your studio in 2 hours? So then they understand. I'm like, look,
Fantastic.
that's the approach
Fantastic.
I have to my work. And sure, there are lots of them who would happily pride themselves on, quick turnaround time and this and that. And, not to say that we take forever. But for me, what I do is a masterpiece. It is my art. It is a craft. It requires time, patience. And I think I'm very grateful that the kind of people that I work with are able to see that, respect that, and they keep coming back because they value what you bring to the table. So I think a large part of, setting up this business is to consciously remind yourself that you're not running this rat race, right? My
Right.
goal is to not, in terms of size, set up like the biggest law firm in this country. No, you're not chasing that. What you are chasing, though, is that will we stand out for what we do? Will not just me,
Right.
will each and every attorney that comes in or goes out of here, are they going to stand out for what?
But how did you define how to stand out? Like that's a great challenge, right? Because when you're setting up and you're starting out, there is so much that you can apply yourself to. So how did that come through? Like how did you decide that?
I think, you realize very early on that what are you chasing? Are you chasing your next paycheck or are you chasing great work, excellence,
Right.
right? And I've
Right.
realized that if you focus on the latter, the first one follows. And I think we can say
Absolutely.
this across the board. It's not just specific to the legal industry. It's across the board, right? I was very lucky, I must say, early on in my career that I did get great opportunities, but I think even more than that, right? It was I think it's the benefit of not having had enough experience that worked in my favor. And I must tell you this because I'm one of the few lawyers who had never interned in a law firm. Right. So
Right.
what I learned was that what I learned on the job. Yes, it was very daunting because you didn't know some of the things that you should have known, and people look at you like, what the hell is this kid doing? But at the same time, because you've not had those years of looking at things black and white, etc., you're also in that sense not jaded. So when a situation
Yeah. There's a fearlessness about it.
exactly, and I think it was that fearlessness in my few initial matters where I think some of them have even been reported widely, that got you to say yes to matters that ordinarily other lawyers were turning down or saying, "Arey, chodo, iska kuch
Right.
nahi hoga." Or, yeah, but this is great. This is what you get. But I'm like, listen, practically it means nothing for the client, right? So I think it was that spirit, that attitude that became one of the defining characteristics. And I saw that it yielded results, right? It worked for me. So I think it's time and again till date when somebody comes to me with a situation saying, look, we've gone to XYZ and everyone said no. You sit, you think, and you're like, what is it that can be done differently? What is it that has not been tried? So I try to consciously keep tapping into that even today. And fortunately, it still seems to work.
I think there's a lot that resonates with me in terms of what you said. I mean, you can only look at what you do as quote unquote art if you care about it that deeply, right? I mean, and that care only comes from an intimate understanding, a deep application, an actual giving a about the other person, right? Not it not being about paycheck to paycheck. The thing that really strikes me from the way you talked about it was the figuring out the unknown bit, right? Like
Right.
I've always been someone personally as well who has spent a lot of 0 to 1 journeys or spent a lot of figuring out the unknown. So that really resonates with me. I think to bring in my listeners to a little bit more of what you do, can you tell us a little about the range of things that you've been covering recently, and which of those are sort of personally exciting for you? I'm sure as the lawyer, you have to say all of them, every single one.
Yes.
But no, you have favorites among children as well.
100%. And I think every year there's that one matter where you say that, you know what, this one tips it, this is the most challenging matter. And I find myself each year changing which matter that one was. But I
Right.
think to give you a sense of, what all we end up doing, I think I put it largely into three or four buckets. One is, of course, your plain vanilla contracts. Right. And I say plain vanilla because you hear the rest of the stuff and then it feels like, hi, ye wakai mein abhi plain vanilla hai. So one is that. The other is all sort of, that's still contractual, but also just general advice on structuring. So where you're consulting, and I think a lot of organizations internally call it business affairs, right? Where it's a cross between
Right.
legal and commercial. I don't identify myself just in the legal bucket because I feel that you cannot possibly holistically advise your client till you are not donning on a commercial hat. If you want to make sure that what your client is doing is a success in an industry, then you've got to think commercially as well. And I think that's one of the roles that I find myself playing increasingly, is in terms of giving advice, keeping in mind what the commercial aspects are. And I
Can
enjoy
you
doing
double
that.
click on that with an
So
example? I
I'll
think
tell you.
I'd
So
love
for
to know.
example, if I have a talent that comes to me, let's say for example in music, right? You see a lot
Sure.
of artists now who are increasingly becoming very, very aware of copyright and ownership. Also, given how technology has evolved, it is very easy for you to put your own music out there, to own your music, to
Right.
control it. So when you have a talent like that, that's a client, you're thinking, okay, what next? Because whether I like it or not, there is a certain shelf life attached to your career, right? As a performer, as someone who can entertain. So I think yes, partly that would be a good agent's job, but given that there is a reason they're working with someone like me, my job is to also look at that 10-year plan, that 20-year plan, right? He or she is creating an asset today. How do I get this asset to outlive the client's shelf life as an
Sure.
entertainer,
Sure.
right? So you're then thinking of ways of, okay, do we set up an entity, let that entity in turn become the record label, become the publisher? Then should eventually that entity start signing other talent, right? Because you'll start generating revenue streams from your own music. You may want to use that
Right.
to then further the career of another talent, which in turn leads you to own a bigger business. After that, you'll
Right.
venture into, can we do merchandising? Can we figure out which are the different attributes that you have? Okay, now you've got a great story. Do we look at, doing a documentary? Do we look at separately licensing certain aspects of your attributes for a different activity? So, you're just constantly pushing the boundary. And like I'm saying, you're literally taking artist and making it artist incorporated. So
Right.
that's where
That's
I
a lovely way of
feel
putting it.
is a
Yeah.
great cross between legal and business. So that's the second bucket. And then I think the third is disputes, which is again any and all disputes. I know a lot of times people think that entertainment, also you're doing IP disputes, but really they're not just IP, right? Today, if somebody owes your client money, it's got nothing to do with IP. It's purely a recovery
Right.
dispute. If your client had equity in a company in lieu of his endorsement, and the person didn't deliver and shares have invested, that's not got anything to do with IP. It's a corporate dispute. And then the
Right.
last bucket, which again is something that keeps me on my toes and is a close second to me doing structuring and this cross between legal and commercial, would be crisis. And I know that in the
Right.
last few months we've seen a lot of it, but it's just something that I think is a great test of what the fiber that you're made of as a lawyer, as an advisor, as someone who has to think strategy. It's about, I think I'm one of those few people that is particularly calm in a crisis, and you need that. Clients need that in you, especially when they are the ones that are facing the heat, no matter what.
Hyperventilating. Yeah.
And everyone reacts differently to situations. So some situations that may not seem like crisis to you and me is perhaps the most life-threatening situation for this particular client. And I think you have to respect that and then function from that position. That what do I do for this person? This is the biggest crisis, right? So, again, when it comes to crisis, it could be all sorts of different situations. It could be a horrible allegation against you on social media, or it could be something that you innocently said in a press conference that has been completely construed out of context, or it could be a
Right.
character that you felt, you decided to portray. It's nothing to do with, the lines are written by somebody else, it's being, scripted by somebody else, but because you're the face of it, you're facing a lot of consequences. It's just a whole variety of things, or it could even be something in your personal life. You're going through a particular situation where, fans are not reacting well, or a studio doesn't like the stance that you're taking. So it could be a lot of things. And I think it's how you react to that crisis that that is key. And one of the other reasons why I think, again, a lot of people might wonder that why the hell is an entertainment attorney talking about crisis? You've got publicists for that, and you've got criminal lawyers for that. And, sure, I think what people don't realize is that, like I said in the beginning of this interview, that think of yourself when you're an entertainment lawyer as the general counsel. And as a situation demands it, you'll bring in specialists. So yes, you will work hand in hand with the publicist, with the agent, with a criminal lawyer also, where of course you need a specialist to come in and do their job.
Right.
But you're still advising, you're still strategizing, because you have the bird's eye view for your client, right? I know today if my client is in a crisis, besides just sure public opinion, you'll tide over, you'll manage at some point of time, right? But I have other repercussions also. Maybe I have reps and warranties in a contract that get affected. Maybe I have an indemnity that is going to get invoked. Maybe I had certain deliverables and timelines that I'm just not able to meet. So because I am in that position where I'm holistically looking at advising a client on multiple fronts, which is why I think, again, dealing with crisis is something that I wouldn't say I don't think enjoy is the right word, because you certainly don't enjoy deriving any benefit out of somebody else's misery. But I think for me, it is a constant test and challenge. And I think I find myself doing that more and more and getting better at it each time.
That's fantastic. I mean, the beautiful way that you laid it out. Do you think lawyers get a bad rep in entertainment, or is it? I mean, it really sounds like there's a lot that the industry could get out of lawyers, right? And I've met some great ones during my time. So personally, I don't believe it, right? I think the application of a very evolved profession, right? It's not black and white. It's not commerce. It's not trade. It's a very evolved framework. There's an objectivity to it. There's personal belief, and there's law and precedent. But as a broad stroke statement, do you think lawyers generally get a bad rep unnecessarily?
All the time. You're the bad cop for every situation. You are thrown under the bus. I can go on and on. I have stories about this where I have not even been present in boardrooms, and somebody's saying, yeah, but the lawyer said XYZ. No. You want to say it, but sure, blame it on your lawyer. And then months later, someone will say that, listen, yeah, but why why were you being so anal about this particular point? And I said, I didn't. I wasn't even present in that room. So yes, we do get a bad rep, but happily so. There are a lot of situations where
it comes with the territory.
And actually, there are a lot of situations where I think it's easier to play good cop, bad cop between my client and I. And if I have to be bad cop, sure, right? But I think, the two things that I think the myths in that sense that need to be busted is, one, when people say, "Ha, legal ko bhej diya hai." Very often legal comes last, unfortunately, in this country, right? So the deal is done and everybody's okay and everything. Your deliverables are done, and just a few hours before release or a few days before release or something is starting, then you realize, okay, now as a formality, let's put paperwork in place. And that's when it comes and lands on your lawyer's desk. So again, but given everything that I've said, I don't see myself just doing just as legal. So I think I hope people started seeing that entertainment attorneys are able to add a lot more value overall to the construct of a transaction than just settling language in an agreement for you. And number two, something that I say very often, there is no Entertainment Act of 2020, right? So when people say that, oh, but you're an entertainment lawyer, so you therefore can't advise on corporate transactions, or can't advise on an equity deal, or can't do a defamation suit. But look at everything that I've described, right? So it's not that there is no act or statute that is just limited to entertainment. In fact, we're looking at so many different acts and statutes that you're in that sense specializing, but in a whole bunch of different things. So I hope those are the two things I wish that people saw differently when they think of entertainment lawyers. We're not just advising on copyright.
Yeah, your general counsel analogy sort of makes a lot of sense, right? Let me double click on this and ask you some of your favorite cases and what you think would be a few essential reading cases or essential talking about cases at least
Right.
on this podcast.
I think one of the first ones that put me on the map is obviously the Sonu Nigam case. And,
Right.
typically, even till date, I think a lot of people talk about it simply because it did set a precedent. It was one of the first few matters of its nature. Even when I remember when Sonu came to me with the matter, and I haven't spoken about this particular story anywhere else. I should share it with you.
Breaking news.
Totally. And he's one of my favorite people. But believe it or not, we fought a lot. And now
Right.
looking back, I was a really young attorney. I must have had some nerve to, have that argument with Sonu, who was an still is an absolute legend. But,
Absolutely. Yeah.
it was his point of view, his determination, saying, no, there is something absolutely wrong about what has happened here. Are you telling me that there is nothing I can do? And I think every time somebody says that to me, till date, I want to take a step back and think, listen, this person is aggrieved. I refuse to believe that there can't be a solution, right? So I think Sonu and I had a lot of that at different points of time up till the matter got filed. Even after the matter got filed, I think what few people know is that we actually had an injunction ex parte on the first hearing itself. The judge granted us an injunction and said, here, great, your prayers have been, I'm granting all of these prayers, ex parte injunction, permanent injunction against XYZ, whatever, and suit disposed of. And believe it or not, Sonu was livid. He's like, what the hell is this? I went through the trouble of getting lawyers, of coming to court, of spending money, of remaining present. The other side didn't even have to make an appearance, didn't engage lawyers. They didn't as much as bother showing up. And you're saying that, this is a great order. I got what I wanted. And yes, legally speaking, that order is a dream order, right? Because you're in one hearing, your suit has been decreed, you got your prayers, everything, you got the injunction you wanted. Uh, and that's where experience teaches you that you need to think practically, right? Now look at it this way: when somebody has done it, they've done it wrong, they've used his image. He's saying, "What's the point of a permanent injunction? Of course, this person won't do it again." The fact that I filed a suit is enough for him to realize कि अरे अब ये दोबारा नहीं हो सकता है. But you think, so also, what about the wrong that has already been done? How does this remedy that? And we actually went back to the judge, had the suit restored, argued it, put all these points forward, and that's when the matter had the ultimate outcome that it had. And this is going back to what I said earlier, that one is that you're not jaded, right in the beginning. So for you to actually even argue internally and say, you know what, no, there's a point there, right? The client is right. Um,
Right.
and, so you go back, reopen the suit, argue a matter, and then get the order that finally made headlines. So for all these reasons, I think that matter will always have a special place in my heart. But like I said, every
I love the part where you said, "Hey, man, no matter what the law says, no matter there's someone who's feeling aggrieved, and there is something that can be
yeah,
done to help."
yeah.
Yeah, I think uh, that should be the lawyer rebranding exercise this world needs. Like just putting it out there, but please.
And then I know absolutely. And Vineet, really till date, I think that is one of the guiding principles, even when we're thinking of strategy, including in light of a lot of things that are happening, especially even when you're dealing with crisis, right? Yes, something has happened that is wrong. It may not seem huge to you. Like I'll give you another example: damages, right? To get damages
Right.
in this country is an absolute nightmare. You can get a lot of things. You'll get injunctive reliefs, you'll get status quo orders, you'll even get an apology, you'll get something taken down, you'll be able to force someone to make sure that they come and finish shooting, and all sorts of things. But
Right.
damages is a story in itself, and that's again something time and very often clients will say that yes, but how is it fair? I still went through XYZ. I have suffered a certain loss. I have incurred expenses. And again, in all of those situations, you want to sit back, think that yes, he has a point. How do I find a way to put this to a judge? How do I find a way to present it in a court of law, right? And to get the client what at least in the short span of time is going to make him feel that yes, justice was served.
Right.
And again, it's completely subjective, case to case. But going back to other cases that I've loved working on, is I
Right.
think that a close second is something that we did for all of the author community in their big dispute against the Copyright Society, and it went on for a long time. But we were fighting for royalties and for a reconstitution of the board and how certain things were being run. And given that music is a large part of my practice, I think that to me felt like an extremely satisfying experience. Was not easy, was challenging for a variety of reasons. And I'm not even saying legal complications, right? But there are lots of other strategic things that don't even occur to people in terms of, who's your choice of counsel, which is the bench before whom this matter is going to go, timing, are we filing this too close to court vacation? Is it going to get heard fully in time for me to get some order? Will we end up breaking and then you start from scratch again when courts reopen? So I think all of these factors also play a large role in the outcome of a particular matter. And then I think more recently last year when we did the whole Warner Spotify dispute, again, that was special for a variety of reasons because it was definitely challenging in terms of just sheer understanding and interpretation of the law in this country as far as copyright is concerned, as far as statutory licensing was concerned. But also coupled with all of the circumstances around it, we moved court on the eve of Spotify's launch in the country.
Right.
And of course, after that, what has happened was a fight that I think was globally closely watched. And I think the outcome was, what everyone went home with
Right.
feeling happy and satisfied. So.
That's a great repertoire to talk about, right? And again, what strikes me about people who really care is the passion with which they celebrate their wins, right? And it's always lovely to hear someone talk about stuff like that, right? Your eyes light up, and the way you present it's impossible to take someone's passion away from the work that they do, and that really comes through. Let me ask you this though, right? I mean, in my head, when you're talking about these cases, and it sounds very relatable, right? Oh, how should we plan the strategy? And it sounds relatable because, I mean, we're growing up on a diet of procedurals and reality TV, right? That's what we watch. How similar or different is your life from Suits or The Good Wife, right? Like whichever is your person, or if you go back further than like I don't know, the old procedurals.
Well, I think my merger story is definitely my Suits moment.
Right.
So I think to that extent, yes. And The Good Wife, I'm a huge fan of the character that she portrays, Alicia. There is, I think
Yeah,
in a
absolutely.
lot of ways, I'd be lying if I said that there isn't. It really doesn't transpire in real life. It very, very much does. Situations are different, circumstances are different. Maybe the law is different, but I think the way it's summed up on screen in terms of the drama, the twists and turns, all the external factors, right? Your relationship with a client, your relationship with a rival firm, your equation with a particular judge. I think all of that is completely what translates in real life every single day. And, again, I can, some of the experiences that I've had is a lot of it actually for me a lot of my journey has been to focus on relationships. As a young lawyer, just as a lawyer, the stereotype is that, oh, they're aggressive, right? Or they're necessarily people who can use a lot of strong language, strong negotiation, very aggressive. And I think because of that stereotype, people are anyway sometimes actually averse to having a lawyer present in the room because they feel that, "Arey yaar, baat bigad jayegi." Let's bring the lawyers in later. And I think I must confess, yes, in the early years of my career, perhaps I too have been guilty of being a tad bit too aggressive, where I shouldn't have been. But I think as you grow, right, both in age as well as in experience, you realize that tact is more important, right, than anything else. There is a way to say the exact same thing more tactfully. You
Oh,
can still
absolutely.
be firm. Just because you're not aggressive doesn't mean that you're not firm. Also, I think what happens is that the relationships that you build, the kind of respect that you're able to command, goes up so many folds, because people realize that when she comes to a negotiating table, or when she comes to a settlement table, or when we're in a dispute with her, the goal is to not, have this attitude that it's my way or the highway. No matter,
Right.
no transaction, no settlement is ever my way or the highway. And I think any competent, successful attorney will tell you that. Any satisfied client will tell you that, right? And I say this to clients across the board in all disputes or in any agreement also, that it's never my way or the highway. Any good relationship, like our relationships outside of professional ones also, is about finding middle ground, is about finding compromise. And I think that's been my biggest learning. And I feel today is one of my biggest assets. And what you do in the process is that you build relationships even with people that you're up against. And believe it or not, it happens so often that once I've closed a transaction or a dispute, I've had the other side reach out to me for their next matter or dispute, saying that, hey, it was such an experience, such a pleasure. We would love to see what we can do together. And I think that to me is a testament of a job done well.
If I may, and I mean, I know you for all of like maybe 1.5 hours or 2 hours that we've spoken, but I think that's the entrepreneurial learning that has
I
layered
agree.
onto the legalese that's already been there. Maybe it's an oversimplification, but I think that could be one of the sources. And I echo that sentiment completely, man. When you're young and smart and brash, you feel like the world is yours. है ना, मतलब मैंने आज इससे ये डील कर लिया, इसके बाद तो मैं जीत गया ना. बट यू हैव टू कम बैक टू दैट गाय नेक्स्ट ईयर ऑल्सो एंड डू अ डील विद हिम. सो एब्सोल्युटली रिलेशनशिप्स, consensus building, my god, I think compromise is a dirty word,
Yeah,
but
you're
consensus
right. You're
building,
right. Yeah.
I think is a great way that people can conduct themselves. I think it's a fantastic way of putting that, Priyanka. If I were to say to a young artist, not to legal,
Mhm.
if to a young artist, what would be your three must do legal, commercial, crisis, whatever, business affairs advice that you would give them, like three must do's for a young artist from a legal perspective, right? And I'm asking this from my own experience. When I was younger, we used to have a band and write music and all of that, but we were
Oh,
like, kaun
lovely.
karega ye sab, right? Oh, way back when. This is like 15 years now.
Have to go find those
Uh,
videos also now.
oh yeah, they're on the internet. They're embarrassing enough. You can find they're there. But we had no idea, right? What it means, right? I mean, and now I know that, oh hey, if I had written a song, then just by recording it and putting it somewhere else, it's subject to some legal already, right? Now I know it. But at that time I didn't know, right? What would be your advice for young artists, any field, right? Music being maybe primary, but others.
Number one, get sound advice, get sound professional advice. And again, an analogy that I like to use with clients is that I can't play music, I can't write music, and you can't practice law, right? So don't
Right.
DIY. Get sound professional advice. That would be number one. Number two is, and I'm saying this specifically to artists, right? Irrespective of whether it's music, film, TV, behind the scenes, in front of the camera, is that, there's a deep inherent feeling that I am being shortchanged. Always,
Right.
right? Oh, it is always like this, and I won't have a say in my contract, and I'm always getting the short end of the deal, or this victim behavior. Um,
Complex, yeah.
I would say that, please try to, and I'm saying this despite being extensively being perceived as talent lawyer, is that, there is a healthy deal always has give and take. So yes, if you have that feeling of being shortchanged, then perhaps somewhere it's true, which means that then you need to sit back and think that what all is it that I wanted from this? Am I getting that? Okay. To get that, what all am I giving? I think that balance has to be done. But there is no point thinking that I'm feeling shortchanged. But because you have to look at even what the other person is bringing to the table, which sometimes as talent we tend to lose sight of. And I think number three would be, let's think, communication. Very, very, very important. Like you said, when you were in a band or when we are collaborating and creating things together, everything is just left to good faith and, this bro culture or, but we decided to do it together. And then we don't think about things. You don't need a lawyer to tell you what the arrangement should be, right? But just to have some clarity amongst yourselves, just don't shy away from recording that email, from sending that WhatsApp after you've emailed what you think is a confidential note to someone, right? All of it today serves as just, clear evidence of correspondence or communication that you've had with somebody. And that itself, more often than not, goes a long, long way in safeguarding your interests. So I would say, yes, communication and recording communication is, you can just, like 90% of your life is simplified with that.
Fantastic. I think that just you took a second to think and came up with something that made a lot of sense to someone starting out. Even if it is on the back of a paper napkin somewhere, take a picture of that napkin, right? With that, we'll bring part one of our episode with Priyanka to a close. Come back next week for us to hear us talk about memes violating corporate law, what protections a writer may have in India, and how music and legal is battling it out with the internet. That's it from me on Storytellers and Storysellers. This is Vineet Kanabar saying goodbye.
I hope you enjoyed that show. If you aren't following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I want to remind our Tamil-speaking audience about the new show from Kadai Podcast. The previous season was Punyan Selvan. The new show that we're doing is Sivakamyan Sabata. Kavita Jiva, who's the host of the show, basically what she does is she retells these old classics in a modern idiom. I think you'll really enjoy that. Quickly running through some of the other guests that we had this week. Luke Coutinho showed up on Cyrus Says, where he and Cyrus had a great conversation about fitness and all things related to that. Rahul Dacuna was on Gauri Devi Dayal's show. This round's on me. Again, great conversation around brands and things like that. Maruk Inayat had Kaveri Banzai on her show to discuss Sushant Singh Rajput's death and the effect it's going to have on Bollywood as it goes forward. Archana Vora, who is a director of small and medium businesses at Facebook, she was on Advertising is Dead, talking about the kinds of work that Facebook is doing with smaller businesses. And remember, Edges and Sledges continues its fan series. Do definitely check that out. And last, one final thing, that Cock and Bull this week was really interesting. Cyrus, Kunal Vijayakar, Gauri Devidayal, and myself spoke quite a bit about the restaurant industry and the challenges that they're facing in this pandemic. So do definitely check that out. I think you'll enjoy that. And with that, I hope to see you again next week.
Have you ever wondered how successful people do their thing? How do they navigate the challenges they often face? Are you wondering about the future of restaurants, film, education, technology, and everything else in between? Hi, I'm Gauri Devidayal, best known for being one of the brains behind The Table, an award-winning restaurant in Bombay. One thing my life as a restaurateur has given me is the opportunity to meet with some truly inspiring people, most often just by chatting with strangers at the community table. And that's what this podcast is about. It's about learning the new dimensions of business and understanding how different people swim this sea. It's an opportunity for me to pick their brains and ask them all the questions on my mind, whether it's about learning from their past experiences or talking about future trends. Through their journeys, stories, and insights, I hope you too, like me, will come away inspired and energized. So come, join me every Wednesday with your favorite drink because this round is on me.